I want to raise the issue again of boarding out regulations. It's a service for older people. So just to explain, because not everyone is familiar with boarding out services are, this is a service for older people who are mobile and generally in good health, who don't require nursing home care, but cannot live on their own, maybe because they wouldn't just quite manage, or they don't want to because of loneliness and so forth. So instead they can live in a house in the community, which is the overview is done by the HSE, and a family can take in up to 6 residents to live with them in their home. The HSE pay a certain amount for each resident, and then each resident also pays a percentage of their pension, which is determined by the HSE. Now, this was a common enough practice in Cavan. There were 8 boarding out houses at one time. We're now down to 1. And that one is actually given notice to the HSE that they're going to finish up at the end of July. And the reason that they're finishing up, and that many of them have stopped operating, and it wasn't just in Cavan, it was in other counties as well, is that the regulations which were introduced in 1993 haven't been updated since. There was a review carried out about 15 years ago, but it was a very basic review and little changed. So the statutory instrument, which is 225 of the 1993 regulations, needs to be updated. And providers need to see an increase in the amount that the HSE pays. They need to see that standardised across CHO areas, because of different areas were paying different amounts. And they also need to see an increase in the amount that the resident pays. They also would like to see the number of residents increased from 6 up to 9, and also asked that tax exemptions, similar to a rent-a-room, tax exemptions be introduced to make the scheme more attractive. However, I've been raising this issue since 2020. I've raised it with Minister Donnelly and then with Minister Butler. I had many interactions with Minister Butler about this. I had submitted PQs, I raised it on the floor of the Dáil, I'd written to her. She assured me that she was having her officials update the regulations, but absolutely nothing happened. I've raised it with the current minister, which is Minister Kieran O'Donnell, and again, I'm hearing since March that he's going to do something about this, but nothing has happened. And it's come to crunch point now, because the last provider is finishing up in just over a month. Those residents that are living with her were in tears when they heard this, because they have nowhere to go other than into a nursing home, which they do not want to go to. The cost to the state of putting them in the nursing home versus keeping them in boarding out regulations is about a difference of an average 30,000 per year. It's huge. So like the amount that the HSE pay is probably about around 8,000 to 9,000 at the moment. Whereas in a nursing home, you would be paying a lot more than that. It could be anything up to 50,000 a year. So I just think that this scheme needs to be updated, it needs to be revised, it needs to be made more attractive, and it needs to be expanded, because I think it's a very good scheme. The residents that are living in the house, I was actually talking to them the other day, and they get their food and their board there, but they can come and go as they please. They can get a bus into Cavan Town or into Longford Town. They can go to bingo. They can go up to the pub for a drink. They can do it's an independent life with just a little bit of support, and that they're not living on their own. And they're going to lose all of that now, because successive ministers have failed to update these regulations. And I have to say the HSE have also failed to promote this scheme. And I think it's a very good scheme that would suit a lot of people, keep them in their communities, out of nursing home, and be able to live a supported, more or less independent lives. And I think that's what we need. And it's something that's supported strongly by the charity alone as well, just to say that. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Gerhard. And I thank the Senator for raising this issue. And I think it's something that we all need to be aware of that is there. And I would say maybe a lot of us don't know about it at the moment, so thanks for raising it. The boarding out scheme offers an alternative care option for older people who are no longer able to live independently in their own homes and wish to remain in their communities where they may otherwise be accommodated in residential care. The boarding out scheme itself currently operates across 3 former community health organisation areas. They are in CHO1, CHO2 and CHO8. The HSE has reported that at present there are only 8 service providers operating the scheme across the country, with approximately 39 people availing of the service. The most recent review of the scheme was completed by the HSE in 2017, which concluded that there was merit to further review the scheme and its utility and viability in rural areas in particular. The HSE review also noted possible changes to the expansion of the scheme, particularly the current funding model. The review also noted that consideration should be given to the impact on the welfare of residents that might arise from the lack of requirements in relation to specific training or qualifications needed to be able to deliver the scheme. The Minister for Older People and Housing has requested that officials in the Department of Health consider this model of care and the regulations for the scheme, as well as the rate of pay. The Minister has also requested that they consider the implications of the rising costs on operators associated with running these types of accommodations. The Department is aware of the challenges being faced by operators currently providing boarding house services and acknowledges the inflationary cost pressures associated with the service, in particular in relation to heating costs. Additionally, it is the Minister's view that consideration must be given to modernising the scheme. For some people with limited care needs, this scheme can represent a cost-effective alternative to residential care services, as you have said. A potential expansion of the scheme merits consideration and further exploration, particularly within rural communities.
Thank you, Minister. And I know Minister Kieran O'Donnell did tell me that he was unable to be here because there were oral questions in the Dáil. And look, what he's saying is really reassuring. But I've been hearing that for quite a number of years and nothing has been done. And just to make a point, when I first raised this issue in 2020 or 2021, there were 51 providers involved. Now there's only 8. So that tells you why people are leaving. It's not because they don't want to continue, it's that they can't continue because of the cost pressures, inflation and the cost of food, the cost of fuel and of electricity. They've all gone up, but the money they're receiving for providing this service has not gone up in tandem with that. Also, I mean, the provider I was talking to the other day said, like, it's very difficult for her to afford to pay staff. She's working basically around the clock herself, and she's not even getting the minimum wage when you work it out, if you looked at it that way, with the amount of money she's getting per hour. So I don't know, I would just hope that something can be done in time before she actually exits this service. But at this stage, I'm not sure about that. But even if it could be looked at, updated and encouraged, more people might get involved if the scheme is more attractive. Thank you.
Aaron?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. And as previously noted, the boarding out scheme facilitates older people to remain in the communities. I think it's very important, where their level of care or needs do not require them to enter into residential care facilities, but to get some support locally. That's what it's all about. While the use of the boarding house scheme by the HSE has traditionally been small, the potential of the scheme merits consideration and further exploration. I acknowledge that it may benefit from measures to allow for greater flexibility in the payment mechanism as well. The Government aims to provide and fund services that allow older people to remain independent in their own living in their own homes with dignity and independence for as long as possible. Where staying at home is no longer an option, the State supports individuals to access long-term residential care. This model provides an example of how we can support people with additional needs in the community so that they do not have to enter into long-term care facilities. We will continue to develop and improve health services in the regions of the country to meet this objective and to ensure quality and patient safety. In this vein, the Minister has requested that his department consider this model of care in the context of the Government's overall commitment to enhancing opportunities for older people to stay in their homes and their communities longer. So I'll be bringing back your issues to the Minister as well. So thank you very much.